Hey fellas, welcome back. This week is going to be a headphone amplifier week, but instead of focusing on some unobtainium level amplifiers that very few can afford, I'm going to focus on three amplifiers which I consider to be affordable and that follow my strict rules of how an amplifier should be designed and how it should sound. These are the amplifiers I'm going to discuss this week, and let's start with the smallest and most affordable of the bunch, the Aune N7, which retails for $399 in the USA and 429 euros here locally. This is going to be an in-depth look, so prepare a snack and a drink, and let's go ahead with this review. You are probably wondering right now why I picked this one over many other headphone amplifiers at a similar price point, and let me explain to you why. First of all, this is a fully discrete headphone amplifier that is not using op amps in the signal path. So we have a couple of JFETs at the input stage, which usually mimic the sound of vacuum tubes, and we have a couple of current buffers working as power amplifiers. Secondly, this is a fully Class A headphone amplifier that is never moving to Class AB, and you can choose between low bias or high bias Class A. If you move it to Class A, high bias, then it gets a little bit warmer. The maximum temperature that I measured was 45 degrees Celsius after 8 hours of non-stop music playback, which is far away from its 70 degree Celsius threshold, so it's warm but not really hot, which I like very much. And lastly, it does have a couple of analog relays when controlling that volume, so you can say that this is a R2R volume control, so this is a very precise volume control working in a fully balanced operation. And of course, the most important part is the sound that it produces. That is the most important part. And I also like that Aune is not pricing this one very aggressively, so I find it actually quite affordable for what it offers. You should also know that there are two versions of this amplifier. The standard one, which I'm testing right now, and the one with an internal DAC section, which uses a Cirrus Logic DAC chip. That one is by $100 more expensive, but of course I have just the standard version, which can be used as a headphone amplifier or preamplifier. I'm a little bit surprised how much technology Aune was able to squeeze in such a small package. As you can see, entirely made from aluminum, so everything is from aluminum, including these lateral heatsinks. We only have a glass sheet on its front panel that is covering its 3-inch colorful display. Yeah, the UI is quite simple and you don't need more than a minute to figure out all of the features it provides. A short press on the volume knob lets you select the RCA or XLR input, a double press lets you select low or high bias, and a long press lets you select the gain and its working mode, since it can also act as a stereo preamplifier. The cool thing is that Aune Audio also includes this cool metallic remote control. So we have a $400 unit that has a metallic remote control, and I reviewed a couple of $3,000 plus DACs that come with a plasticky remote control. So this is pretty cool, especially when used as a preamplifier in a stereo setup. This puppy outputs up to 6.5 watts per channel in 32 ohms via its 4.4mm balanced outputs, and I believe a little over 2 watts via the regular 1/4-inch headphone jack. As you can see, there wasn't enough space on its front panel to accommodate a 4-pin XLR headphone jack, but don't worry, you do not need to change your expensive third-party cables because you can use something like this. This is an adapter from DD Hi-Fi that converts a 4-pin XLR jack into a 4.4mm connection, so something like this and your problems are solved. Reaching such an affordable price, obviously some compromises needed to be made, and the most important one, and the one that you should know, is that it does not have an internal linear power supply, but it uses an external switching mode power supply. This is it. This is a 36 watt power supply that provides 18 volts and 2 amperes. Of course, you can change it, you can use something better, something that I used already. I did use an overkill Kisses P14 power supply, and yes, it sounded better, there was more drive, the noise floor dropped even further, but that one is simply too big, too expensive. I'm not recommending that one specifically for this one. But any power supply that provides 18 or 19 volts and at least 2 amperes will work just fine with this one. Don't worry if the power supply that you connect to this one provides 3 or 4 amperes. It doesn't matter, it won't damage anything because the voltage is given by default, that is important, but amperes are pulled by this one depending on the load. Sound-wise, it has all of the characteristics I know solid-state Class A and fully discrete headphone amplifiers to have, and in this regard it works like a miniature version of the S17 Pro Evo headphone amplifier at roughly half the price compared to that one. The biggest differences is that S17 Pro Evo provides even more power and it's powered by a custom linear transformer, a 50-watt linear transformer. This one has a little bit less power and of course it uses an external switching mode power supply. In a nutshell, you should expect an amplifier that puts a lot of effort into delivering a punchy bass line. Also like that it has a pretty long sustain when it comes to long bass lines like organ pipes, for example, even with hard-to-drive planars, which was unexpected. It has a pretty impressive driving force as well, and I'm not discussing volume here, but how well it drives my headphones. But don't forget, we have a high bias Class A amplifier, and of course Class A amplifiers usually have a much tighter control over headphone drivers, and that's what I'm hearing with this amplifier. JFET based amplifiers like this one have a somewhat bolder and full-bodied tone, something that again I get from this amplifier, and in this regard it again sounds like a miniature version of the S17 Pro Evo. There is definitely a little bit of sweetness in the vocal range, and also musical instruments also have somewhat a more colorful presentation. The sound is a bit more contrasty and colorful, say, compared to an op-amp based amplifier. And while I cannot say that a frequency range is boosted or is taking a few steps back, I can definitely say that the bass is somehow a little bit more powerful. There is more rumble in the bass and a little bit more sweetness in the mid-range as well. It's almost like I'm testing a hybrid headphone amplifier that uses vacuum tubes at the input stage and transistors at the output buffer stage. This one has a little bit of effortlessness and a little bit of liquidity that usually I'm getting from tube-based amplifiers. So there is some sort of smoothness with this amplifier that removes the hardness and the over-sharpness from the music. Power-wise, I honestly didn't expect it to work well with some demanding loads like Hi-Fi Susvara Unveiled, but hey, I couldn't reach maximum power on this one with my own DAC. I could reach maximum power maybe for 5 or 10 seconds with an industry standard DAC that provides 4 volts via XLR, but with a hotter sounding DAC like mine, I couldn't reach maximum volume. It was simply way too loud. The interesting part is not that I couldn't reach maximum volume on this one. The interesting part is that the bass was not distorting, the energy was not going down, it was not clipping even close to maximum volume. So I had all of the signs that this one is working very well with hard-to-drive headphones. Of course, I'm not recommending this one with the very best and with the most expensive headphones out there. There is a reason high-end headphone amplifiers are created and are made, because they have some, nicer things like big soundstage, like an amazing resolution, something that sadly we do not have on the Aune N7. It's okay in here in terms of resolution and transparency and soundstage, but it's not really amazing. If you have thousands to burn on an expensive pair of headphones, then sadly you should prepare thousands to burn on an amplifier or a DAC or both, because you can unleash maximum potential from your headphones by using a better headphone amplifier and a better DAC. This is the hard reality. I'm sorry to say it so loudly and so directly. As I'm telling you this, Aune Audio is already preparing a beastly headphone amplifier that will be called A17. It's a much bigger, beastlier looking headphone amplifier. I already tried that one at the Munich high-end show, and I think I'll try it once again this year. I think it will be revealed this year, and I'm looking forward to that. As you can already expect, anything that was easier to drive, like these headphones, so anything else that I have on my headphone wall, was easily driven. So I had control, I had a tight grip, I had as much energy as I wanted in the bass, I had the sweetness in the mid-range, and most importantly, the sound was not hard or sharp, so that's exactly the sound that I like. It drove them all, and I'm very glad that I'm living in times like this when a tiny headphone amplifier can drive the scariest planar headphones out there without limiting the engagement factor in any way. I had another surprise when I connected two pairs of high-end IAMs. These are multi-driver IAMs. These are the FIO FX17 and these are the Hybe Zeta 2. So they have dynamic drivers, balanced armatures, electrostatic drivers. These are very complex IAMs, but more importantly, these are very detailed and resolving sounding, and these are sniffing the noise floor of the amplifiers very, very easily. I used the 4.4mm balancer connection. I used high gain, not low gain, and at around 15 out of 30 steps available, there is a little bit of hiss passing through, but mind you, at that volume, at 50 out of 30 steps available on high gain, I'll probably drill a hole into my eardrums or damage these IAMs. So I simply cannot press play at that volume. I can press play at around 8, maybe 9 on high gain, and that is around 85 dB of volume. And at that volume, I cannot hear any hiss whatsoever. On low gain, I cannot detect any kind of hiss, even at maximum level. So you could say that this is an IEM-friendly amplifier as long as you remain on that low gain. And that already tells me how much care Aune Audio put into voltage regulation and filtering stage. After that, stock switching mode power supply, which usually injects a little bit of noise. Finally, let's discuss that low and high Class A bias of the Aune N7. I made one mistake in my Aune S17 Pro review that I posted some 1 year ago, where I mentioned that it works in either Class AB or Class A operation. The truth is, it always works in Class A, and you can choose between a higher bias of 100 mA for its power transistors or a lower bias of 50 mA. And that's exactly what the next generation S17 Pro EVA got. And that's what I believe and I hope we have on the M7, because we do not know how much bias we have on that low or high bias position. Aune Audio is not mentioning that anywhere. The S17 Pro, the first one, was getting quite hot when used in high bias mode, and if you didn't have some proper ventilation all around it, then it would overheat in time and it would change to a lower 50 mA bias, something that happened to me many times. However, that issue was completely solved on the S17 Pro Evo. That one was much cooler, and I observed that it was never overheating in my case and it was never moving to a lower bias. This one is, however, much cooler compared to S17 Pro, S17 Pro Evo. So you can use this one always in high bias if you please. Just make sure that we have proper ventilation all around it and you don't put anything on top of this one. If you're wondering if there is a sonic difference between low and high bias, yes, there is a difference, and you can hear it mostly with hard to drive planar headphones and in general with planar headphones. There is a smaller difference with dynamic headphones and almost no difference at all with ultra sensitive loads such as IAMs. In a nutshell, in high bias, you can feel that you have a better control over your drivers, and with lightning fast tunes like electronica, for example, you can hear that right away, that the music is a bit faster and the transit response is better and you have a better grip over headphone drivers. You could also hear that the bass is improving in quantity and in quality as well, but especially in quality, where it's simply tighter and grippier. The effortlessness and smoothness effects are improving when using it in high bias, and your mind starts to relax. And considering that it's not overheating in high bias, I simply see no reason to use this one in low bias anymore, because it simply sounds better with everything I throw at it. Alright everyone, now let's draw some conclusions. I really like its small form factor and the fact that I can include it in a super small and tiny and tidy looking hi-fi setup, and that wouldn't be so difficult. And you can use even a very small rack and accommodate that streamer that also Aune provides, and also they have a clock, I believe, and power supply for this streamer, so you can make a three-way stack with this one, and that stack won't occupy a lot of desktop space. I also like that we have these small but cute and all metallic remote controls, something that I don't see even much more expensive units. I also like that I can drive pretty much everything with this, and I also like that it worked very okay with ultra-sensitive IMs on low gain. So these are very powerful and interesting and good parts. I also like that it's not overheating as much like its bigger brothers, S17, S17 Pro. So these are all good parts. Visually, I don't like this short rubber feet because this is a Class A headphone amplifier, and when I'm thinking about such amplifiers, I'm always thinking about heat generation, heat dissipation, and with a taller rubber feet, I would never think about that. So that's just nitpicking on my side. The other con that I can say about this one is that resolution and transparency was not really the best. There are cleaner and more detailed sounding headphone amplifiers, and also soundstage was not really the biggest, the most holographic that I have experienced. I believe it's okay, but again, not really amazing, or it will not wow you with a huge stage or with a super resolving sound. It probably doesn't care that much about perfect measurements because it focuses mostly on the act of music listening, which is where it shines the most. While this is not a perfect headphone amplifier by any means, I believe this is as perfect as you can get at around $400 US. Thanks as always for watching everyone. Please don't forget to like, dislike, maybe subscribe if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you very soon with that Singster SA2 and HiFiMan Golden Wave GA10 reviews, which I'm cooking for a while now. I'll see you soon. Cheers!